Twilight at Clinton, the Lynne Harper tragedy, and a town's unraveling. Imagine a warm summer evening in 1959. The sun dips low, painting the sky over RCAF Station Clinton in hues of gold and amber. Nestled 180 kilometers west of Toronto, this military base hums with a quiet rhythm of routine. 3,500 souls, bound by trust, where children chase the fading daylight and laughter spills freely into the streets. It's a snapshot of small-town Canada at its most idyllic. Military precision meets neighborly charm, a place where the air smells of summer and safety. But on June 9th, as twilight creeps over the horizon, a darkness stirs. Unseen, unspoken, and about to shatter this fragile peace forever. In this tight-knit world, two young lives are on a collision course with destiny. Lynne Harper, a cautious 12-year-old dreamer with a quiet strength, slips out into the dusk, her mind set on swimming passes and summer promises. Stephen Truscott, the 14-year-old golden boy of the base, athletic, popular, a kid with a grin that lights up the schoolyard, offers her a ride on his bike. They pedal off together, classmates from Air Vice Marshal Hugh Campbell School, silhouetted against the fading light. What happens next will rip this community apart, sending shockwaves across the nation and leaving scars that time can't heal. A girl vanishes, a boy is accused. A frantic search ends in the tangled depths of Lawson's bush, where Lynne's body is found, her innocence stolen, her life snuffed out in a brutal act that defies comprehension. The town reels, suspicion festers, and Stephen Truscott is thrust into a nightmare of injustice that will haunt Canada for decades. But beneath the surface of this tragedy, a question pulses like a heartbeat. Was the real killer caught? Or did they slip away into the shadows, leaving a town and a family forever broken? Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Today we step into the enigma of Twilight at Clinton, the Lynne Harper tragedy, and a town's unraveling. This isn't just a story of loss, it's a mystery wrapped in doubt, a saga of a community torn apart by suspicion, and a decades-long fight for truth. So as we peel back the layers of this chilling case, one question will linger louder than all the rest. Who really killed Lynne Harper? Stay with us. The shadows are deep, and the truth is waiting. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel, Nickel Investigations, and this is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy, we bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. A thrilling prelude. RCAF Station Clinton, 1959. Imagine a warm summer evening in 1959. The golden sun dipping below the Ontario horizon casts an idyllic glow over RCAF Station Clinton. Nestled about 180 kilometers west of Toronto, this military base, born in 1941 as a radar training outpost and claimed by the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1943, was a bustling hive of roughly 3,500 souls. Here, military families and local residents wove a tapestry of tight-knit camaraderie, their lives intertwined in a community where trust reigned supreme. But beneath this serene surface, a storm was brewing. One that would rend the fabric of this tranquil world apart. The heart of the base. RCAF Station Clinton was no ordinary place. Established during the tumult of World War II, it had evolved into a cornerstone of Canada's radar defense network by the late 1950s. Military precision met small-town charm in a delicate dance. Children roamed freely, neighbors shared stories over fences, and annual events like Air Force Day pulsed with communal spirit. Yet in 1959, that spirit world would falter. The festivities cancelled in the wake of a chilling tragedy. Though the base would eventually close its gates in 1971, becoming part of the modern-day Vanastra, it was in this fateful year that its legacy would take a dark and unforgettable turn. Lynne Harper, the cautious dreamer. Among the base's residents was Lynne Harper, a 12-year-old girl with a quiet strength. Born on August 31st, 1946 in New Brunswick, she was a middle child of Flying Officer Leslie Harper and his wife Shirley. With her older brother Barry navigating grade 11 and her younger brother Jeffrey, just 5, still lost in the innocence of childhood, Lynne occupied a special place in a family that stood among the upper echelons of garrison society. Known for her cautious nature, Lynne was not the type to flirt with danger. No reckless hitchhiking for her. So when she vanished into the twilight of June 9th, 1959, the mystery deepened, leaving the community grasping for answers. Stephen Truscott, the Golden Boy. Then there was Stephen Truscott, a 14-year-old whose energy lit up the base. Born January 18, 1945 in Vancouver, he arrived at Clinton in 1956 with his parents, non-commissioned officer Dan Truscott and Doris. Athletic and popular, Stephen was the kind of boy who seemed destined for greatness. His friendly grin and prowess on the field earning him a legion of admirers among his peers. Little did anyone suspect that this golden boy's life was about to collide with a nightmare, one that would shadow him long after, though he'd later rise above bitterness to build a family and support scholarships through the Truscott Initiative at the University of Guelph. Classmates in a small world. Lynne and Stephen's paths crossed daily at Air Vice Marshal Hugh Campbell School, where they shared a classroom in a combined grade 7 and 8 setting. It was a microcosm of the base itself, intimate, familiar, a place where friendships sparked and secrets whispered through the halls. In this close-knit environment, every glance and every word held weight, setting the stage for a drama that would soon unfold with devastating force. The Edge of Darkness. As the sun dipped low in that fateful evening of June 9, 1959, RCAF Station Clinton stood in the brink of upheaval. What began as a routine day, children laughing, families settling into the night, would spiral into a chilling saga of loss and suspicion. The lives of Lynne Harper and Stephen Truscott, two young souls bound by school and community, were about to intersect in a way that would shock a nation and echo through the decades. This was no longer just a military base. It was the epicenter of a mystery that would test the bonds of trust and forever alter its history. Up next, the crime. The crime. It was a warm summer evening on June 9, 1959. The kind that wraps the small military community of RCAF Station Clinton into a golden embrace. Children's laughter dances through the streets, and the air buzzes with the innocence of a town yet to be scarred. But beneath this serene surface, a chilling tale is about to unfold, one that will grip a nation and echo through time. Around 6 o'clock p.m., 12-year-old Lynne Harper finishes her dinner, her mind set on a simple mission: snagging swimming passes for the summer ahead. She slips out of her home and meets her classmate, 14-year-old Stephen Truscott, at the schoolyard. With a flash of a grin, Stephen offers her a perch on the handlebars of his bicycle, and off they go, pedaling north along County Road toward Highway 8. The wind whips through their hair, the sun dips low, and witnesses catch sight of them around 7 o'clock p.m. Two carefree kids, silhouetted against the twilight, oblivious to the storm brewing on the horizon. But here's where the story splinters into shadows and suspicion. Stephen insists he dropped Lynne at the intersection of County Road and Highway 8. He claims he watched her climb into a gleaming 1959 Chevrolet, its chrome catching the last glints of daylight, an out-of-province license plate hinting at a mysterious stranger. He battled home, rolling in by 8 o'clock p.m., thinking the day was done. The Crown, however, spins a darker yarn. The pair never made it to the highway. Instead, they veered into the tangled, ominous depths of Lawson's bush, a wooded patch pulsing with secrets. The clock ticks on. By 11:20 p.m., Lynne's absence claws at her parents' nerves. She's nowhere to be found. Panic erupts and a frantic call goes out. Dawn breaks and a massive search kicks into gear. Over 250 personnel, from military to police to everyday folks, scour the land, dread tightening their chests. 2 agonizing days later, on June 11th at 1:45 p.m., the search ends in heartbreak. Deep within Lawson's bush, Lynne's body lies in a grim tableau, partially nude, her life snuffed out in a savage act. She'd been sexually assaulted and strangled with her own blouse. Her killer hastily piling branches over her in a feeble bid to bury the truth. The scene is a snapshot of horror frozen in time. Despite the stifling heat, daytime temperatures soaring to the low 30s Celsius, and the damp air, her body shows minimal putrefaction. No animals have dared disturb her, as if nature itself holds its breath. Lacerations from barbed wire scar her left leg, and mud cakes her right foot, whispering a tale of being dragged to her doom. A small locket, a fragile piece of her life, dangles 280 feet south on a fence, an eerie marker of where her nightmare began. That evening, at 7:15 p.m., Dr. John Peniston steps into the grim spotlight, conducting the autopsy that will fuel decades of debate. Inside Lynne's stomach, he finds 1 pint of partially digested food, peas, onions, ham, and white meat, poorly chewed, with little trickling into the duodenum. From this, he pegs her time of death between 7:15 and 7:45 p.m. on June 9th, a tight window that pins the crime to that fateful evening ride. But the story doesn't end there. Whispers of doubt creep in. Unofficial estimates challenge the timeline, suggesting she might have died later, perhaps 12:45 a.m. on June 10th, or even between 4:45 and 10:45 a.m. that same day. The body's minimal internal decay and the presence of fly eggs and maggots, tiny clues in a macabre puzzle, later became linchpins for entomological evidence, muddying the waters further. As the community staggers under the weight of shock, questions swirl like a restless wind. Did Stephen Truscott tell the truth? Or does Lawson's bush cradle a sinister secret? The stage is set, players in place for a mystery that will haunt Canada's conscience for generations. Up next, investigation and arrest. Investigation and arrest. In the eerie twilight of June 12, 1959, the sleepy military outpost of RCAF Station Clinton was a town on edge, reeling from the savage murder of 12-year-old Lynne Harper. The police, spurred by a clamor for justice, descended like hawks on 14-year-old Stephen Truscott, the last soul seen with the victim alive. In a breathless blink, just 3 days after her body was found, Truscott was snatched into custody. By June 13, the weight of the law crashed down. Charged under Section 206 of the Criminal Code as a juvenile delinquent, he was thrust into a nightmare that seemed ripped from a fevered dream. A mere month later, on July 13th and 14th, a preliminary inquiry sealed his fate, committing him to trial in a whirlwind of suspicion. But was this justice, or a rush to judgment? The investigation was a house of cards built on shaky ground, plagued by what Inspector Graham's 1966 report would later brand as tunnel vision. The police locked their sights on Truscott, blind to the shadows dancing just out of reach. Take Mr. and Mrs. Townsend, who swore they saw a girl hitchhiking that fateful night. A tantalizing thread left dangling because, they said, the darkness cloaked any chance of clarity. Case closed, or so the police shrugged, letting potential leads vanish like whispers in the wind. Enter Dr. Brooks, a man possessed. His conviction in Truscott's guilt is unyielding as iron from the very start. Objectivity? A luxury he couldn't afford, or wouldn't. The evidence piled up like a storm gathering force. Witness statements rained down. From Karen Dahm on June 14, her account inked on June 19th, to the voices of Philip Burns and Richard Galatly, each tightening the web around the boy. Then came the cold, hard facts. Bloodstains in Lynne's stomach contents. A grim tableau of peas, onions, ham, and white meat, analyzed with scientific precision, pinning the crime to a narrow window. Yet beneath it all, a murmur of unease persisted. Truscott's fate was sealed the moment he was pegged as the last to see Lynne alive. His tail dropping her off at the intersection, watching her slip into a mysterious car, unraveled under scrutiny. The police pounced on every stumble. His description of the vehicle, the timing, branding his words inconsistent. Interrogation lights burned hot and the boy buckled, his story crumbling like sand. Arrested in a heartbeat, he stood alone, while other suspects, like the enigmatic Alexander Kalachuk, faded into the background, untouched by the law's relentless gaze. Years later, on July 14, 1966, Corporal Hardy stepped into the fray, conducting visibility tests to probe Truscott's claim of spotting that elusive car. The results? A maddening tangle of contradictions, leaving the truth as murky as the night Lynne vanished. Could he have seen it? Or was it a desperate lie? The question lingered, a ghost haunting the case. What unfolded was a saga of haste and hubris. A boy ensnared by a system racing to close the book. Witnesses, evidence, and unwavering certainty had built a cage around Stephen Truscott. But was it the right one? As the trial loomed, the air thickened with doubt. Had justice triumphed, or had it stumbled into the dark? Up next, trial and conviction. Trial and conviction. September 16, 1959. The sleepy town of Goderich, Ontario, transforms into a cauldron of suspense. Inside a packed courtroom, presided over by the steely-eyed Justice Ferguson, a 14-year-old boy named Stephen Truscott sits, his fate teetering on a razor's edge. Accused of the chilling murder of 12-year-old Lynne Harper, he's thrust into a trial that would drag on for 15 nail-biting days, with the jury forced to step out time and again as lawyers clash over gritty details, like whether shocking photographs can even be shown. The stakes? Life or death. The prosecution comes out swinging, unleashing a jaw-dropping 60 witnesses to weave a web of guilt around Truscott. Their case stands on 4 towering pillars, each one a calculated strike. First, Dr. John Peniston, the grim-faced pathologist, steps up and drops a bombshell. The time of death was between 7 o'clock and 7:45 p.m., a window that pins Truscott to the scene like a spotlight. Then, eyewitnesses take the stand. Helen Doreen Blair and Shirley Harper among them, their words sharp and vivid, sketching Truscott and Harper together in the fading light. The prosecution digs deeper, pointing to Truscott's actions after the crime. Alleged lies that they claim scream guilt louder than words. And in a hushed, eyebrow-raising moment, they reveal lesions on Truscott's penis, hinting at violence, though time would later expose this evidence as shaky at best. The defense, outnumbered by defiant, counters with just 14 witnesses. They jab at the time of death, calling it unreliable, and roll out alibis to yank Truscott out of the prosecution's timeline. But here's a twist. Truscott himself stays silent, never taking the stand. A bold move, or a fatal misstep. The courtroom buzzes with whispers. What's he hiding? Or is it all strategy? After days of relentless testimony, the jury, worn down by legal sparring, delivers their verdict on September 30th, 1959. One word slices through the tension. Guilty. The sentence hits like a thunderclap. Death. A 14-year-old destined for the gallows. Gasps echo through the room. But hold on. On January 22, 1960, mercy steps in, commuting the sentence to life imprisonment. Relief maybe, but not freedom. Truscott's desperate appeals crash and burn. First on October 10, 1959, then January 7, 1960. And finally, the Supreme Court slams doors shut on February 24, 1960. A boy's life locked away as the gavel falls silent. This wasn't just a trial. It was a high-stakes drama where every moment pulsed with dread, doubt, and the weight of a young life hanging in the balance. Up next, appeals and early efforts for exoneration. Appeals and early efforts for exoneration. The gavel crashed down, and with it, Stephen Truscott's fate seemed sealed. Appeal after appeal smashed against the ironclad walls of the justice system, each rejection a deafening blow. By 1960, the Ontario Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada had turned their backs, leaving a boy convicted of 14 to rot in prison, his cries for justice swallowed by silence. But then, in 1966, a flare shot up from the darkness. Isabelle Laborde, armed with a journalist's grit and a writer's fire, dropped the trial of Stephen Truscott like a bombshell. This wasn't just a book. It was a battle cry, slicing through years of indifference to expose the shaky foundations of the case. The public, lulled in complacency, snapped awake. Questions buzzed like hornets. Was this a miscarriage of justice? The uproar swelled, a tidal wave crashing against the Supreme Court, until on August 26, 1966, they had no choice but to pry the case open again. The nation leaned in breathless. New testimony trickled out. Voices unheard, clues overlooked, fueling a fragile hope. The hearing dragged into October 1966. Every moment a pulse-pounding gamble. Would this be Truscott's salvation? Then on May 4th, 1967, the verdict thundered down, 8-1 to uphold the conviction. A lone voice, Justice Emmett Hall, fought against the tide, but the majority stood firm. The dream of freedom shattered once more, leaving Truscott and his supporters reeling. Yet from the ashes of defeat, a lifeline emerged. On October 21st, 1969, after 10 grueling years behind bars, Truscott stepped into the free world, paroled but not cleared. He vanished in the quiet streets of Guelph, Ontario, cloaked under the name Stephen Bowers. There he built a life, a family, a job as a millwright, while carrying a burden no alias could hide. Softly but defiantly, he held fast to his truth. I am innocent. For decades the case slumbered, a fading echo in Canada's conscience. Then in 2000, a CBC documentary, Stephen Truscott, His Word Against History, blazed across screens like a lightning strike. It didn't just revisit the past, it tore it wide open, stirring buried doubts and dragging the saga back into the glare of public scrutiny. Canada froze, riveted by a question that refused to fade. Did justice fail? Truscott's fight, it seemed, was far from over. Up next, fight for exoneration and final acquittal. Fight for exoneration and final acquittal. It was a frigid November day, November 28, 2001, when the storm of justice began to brew. The Association in Defense of the Wrongly Convicted, a band of fearless truth seekers, hurled a legal grenade into the system, an appeal that would shake the foundations of a decades-old mystery. Their mission? To resurrect the case of Stephen Truscott, a name etched in Canada's darkest legal lore since his 1959 conviction. The battle was on, and the nation was about to witness a saga of epic proportions. Fast forward to January 24, 2002, and the tension ratcheted it up a notch. Retired Justice Fred Kaufman, a judicial titan, was called into the fray. His task? To slice through the tangled web of the Truscott case with razor-sharp scrutiny. This wasn't just a review. It was a high-stakes investigation, a race against time to unearth a truth smothered by 43 years of silence. By 2004, Kaufman's report hit like a lightning bolt. Its revelations so explosive that on October 28, 2004, the case was thrust into the Court of Appeal. The stage was set for a legal showdown that would grip the country. The hearings erupted from June 19 to July 7, 2006, broadcast live to a riveted audience. This wasn't a dry courtroom debate. It was a televised thriller, every moment pulsing with suspense. New evidence burst forth like fireworks. Forensic entomologists Sheriff Van Leerhoven and Elgin Brown dropped a bombshell. Bugs on Lynne Harper's body whispered a chilling secret. She didn't die on June 9th, as the prosecution had sworn, but on June 10th. The original timeline? Shattered. Pathology experts piled on, shredding the old time of death estimate as flimsy guesswork, a relic of shaky science now exposed. The plot thickened on April 6, 2006. when Harper's body was yanked from its grave and a scene ripped from a crime novel. The goal? DNA that could finally finger the real killer. Canada leaned in, breathless. The ground stayed silent. No usable DNA emerged, leaving the enigma maddeningly unsolved. Then came the climax. August 28th, 2007. The Court of Appeal's gavel fell, and the word rang out, acquitted. Stephen Truscott, once a boy facing the hangman's noose at 14, stood exonerated after a lifetime in the shadows. But the tale didn't fade to black. In July 2008, Ontario tossed him a lifeline. $6.5 million in compensation. A fortune that couldn't rewind the clock, but screamed vindication. Attorney General Michael Bryant stepped into the spotlight, delivering a long overdue apology that echoed across the nation. It was the end of nearly a 50-year odyssey, a roller coaster of heartbreak, grit, and relentless hope. Stephen Truscott had faced the abyss and clawed his way back, not just cleared, but triumphant. Up next, life after release and impact. Life after release and impact. A man steps out of the abyss of a decade-long nightmare. Once a teenage boy staring down a death sentence, now free but forever marked. That's Stephen Truscott. And his next chapter unfolds in the unassuming streets of Guelph, Ontario, a city that became his sanctuary, his battleground for a second chance. Here, he didn't just survive, he thrived. He locked eyes with Marlene, a woman whose steely resolve and unshakable love would rewrite its fate. They tied the knot, raised 3 children, and built a fortress of a family life. A defiant middle finger to the chaos that once consumed him. By day, Truscott clocked in as a millwright, a job where sweat and skill collide. Think of him there, hands steady, bending steel to his will, a far cry from the helpless kid in the courtroom. Every shift was a victory, every paycheck a brick in the life he refused to let injustice steal. He wasn't just working, he was reclaiming. Then in 2020, the spotlight swung back with a vengeance. The documentary, Marlene, hit screens like a lightning bolt, dragging Truscott's saga from the shadows into a blaze of public fascination. It wasn't just about him. It was Marlene's moment too. The film peeled back the curtain on her relentless crusade to exonerate her husband. A one-woman war against a system gone wrong. Audiences sat gripped, hearts racing as the raw truth of their fight unfolded. But the story doesn't end there. It explodes outward. Truscott's ordeal didn't just scar him, it shook a nation. His case became a thunderous wake-up call, spotlighting the chilling reality of wrongful convictions. Canada couldn't look away. In the ashes of his suffering rose the Truscott Initiative, a powerhouse legacy that funds scholarships for the next wave of legal warriors. Students hell-bent on studying law and justice. It's more than money. It's a promise that his pain will fuel reform, that the flaws he exposed won't be ignored. In Guelph, Truscott didn't just live. He roared back to life. His journey, once a tale of despair, now electrifies as a saga of grit, love, and a relentless quest for justice that echoes far beyond his quiet streets. Up next, current status and controversy. Current status and controversy. Decades have rolled by since that fateful summer night in 1959. Yet the specter of Lynne Harper's murder still casts a long, eerie shadow over Clinton, Ontario. This isn't just an unsolved case, it's a relentless, spine-chilling mystery that claws at the edges of time, refusing to be buried. For Lynne's family, the wound festers, unhealed and unforgiving. Her brother Barry, a man forged in the fires of grief and relentless questions, stands firm in his conviction. Stephen Truscott is the fiend who snuffed out his sister's life. In a 2007 Globe and Mail article titled, "Lynne Harper's Family Speaks Out on Truscott," the Harpers unleash their anguish, branding Truscott's acquittal a cruel twist of justice, a slap in the face to their unending sorrow. Suspects. But the plot thickens with every passing whisper. Enter Barry Rule, a retired OPP sergeant who in 2015 tossed a Molotov cocktail into the fray with his book, A Viable Suspect. He didn't just stir the pot, he upended it, pointing a daring finger at a new cast of shadowy figures. Among them, a traveling salesman, a slippery phantom who dodged the spotlight of the original investigation. Who was Larry Talbot? Occupation and mobility. Larry Talbot was a traveling salesman operating in southwestern Ontario, including the Clinton area where Lynne Harper was murdered. Larry Talbot is a pseudonym. His job provided him with the mobility to travel across regions where multiple unsolved murders occurred, making him a potential suspect in Rule's eyes. Criminal history. Talbot had a documented criminal past. In 1971, he attempted to rob Rule and his wife at their cottage in Sauble Beach, during which he sexually assaulted Rule's fiancée. He was arrested by Rule and later received probation. Additionally, police found a rape kit in his car, containing items like surgical gloves, duct tape, flashlights, and knives, hinting at premeditated violent tendencies. Pseudonym and death. Rule uses the name Larry Talbot to shield the suspect's family, as man died on September 3, 2008. Rule stresses that the family was not involved in Talbot's alleged crimes. Evidence linking Talbot to Lynne Harper's murder. Lynne Harper, a 12-year-old girl, was murdered near Clinton, Ontario in 1959. Stephen Truscott was wrongfully convicted of the crime and later exonerated, leaving the case unsolved. Rule argues that Talbot is a viable suspect based on the following circumstantial evidence. Car description. Truscott reported seeing Harper enter a late-model Chevrolet, lots of chrome on the night she disappeared, describing it as a 1959 Chevrolet Bel Air. Talbot owned a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, gray with significant chrome, which closely resembled Truscott's description. Familiarity with the area. Talbot's sales route included Clinton, giving him knowledge of the area, including Lawson's bush, where Harper's body was found. Physical evidence. A shoe print at the crime scene matched Talbot's shoe size. Blood found at the scene was type A, the same as Talbot's blood type. Behavioral traits. Talbot was known to be meticulous, a trait Rule notes in the careful arrangement of the Harper crime scene. While compelling, Rule admits this evidence is not conclusive, but argues it merits consideration. Connections to other unsolved murders. Rule believes Talbot may be linked to additional unsolved murders of young women in Ontario, many involving hitchhikers or bodies found in remote areas. Some examples include Pauline Ivy Dudley, 1973, a 17-year-old from Oakville found murdered in a rural area. Talbot's car was seen nearby, and police found blood and hair inside it, though he was never charged. Lynda White, 1968, a 19-year-old who vanished from London, Ontario. Her remains were discovered in Norfolk County in 1973. Talbot had customers in the region. Jacqueline English, 1969, a 15-year-old found near Tillsonburg, Ontario. Christine Prince, 1982, found in Toronto's Rouge River. Delia Adriano, 1982. A 25-year-old from Oakville, discovered west of Campbellville. Valerie Stevens, 1992. A 19-year-old pregnant woman from Toronto, found near Talbot's residence. Rule mapped these cases in a viable suspect, showing their proximity to Talbot's travel routes and homes. I will include links to episodes of all of those cases. Up next, The Man in the Shadows. The Man in the Shadows. Alexander Kalachuk wasn't just any airman. He was a predator cloaked in uniform. By 1959, his criminal history was a catalog of deviance, indecent exposure, attempts to lure young girls into his car, and a conviction for an indecent act in 1950. 3 weeks before 12-year-old Lynne Harper's murder near Clinton, Ontario, he was arrested for trying to entice 3 girls near St. Thomas. The charges were dismissed, but the judge's warning was ominous. On the very day Lynn vanished, Air Force medical officers were discussing Kalachuk's drinking and erratic behavior, while his probation officer flagged yet another indecent exposure incident. This was a man who radiated suspicion. Stationed an hour away but known to make frequent trips to Clinton, Kalachuk lived just 20 minutes from the base. Yet despite this proximity and his predatory patterns, he was never investigated for Lynn's murder. The police, fixated on 14-year-old Stephen Truscott, overlooked a suspect who seemed tailor-made for scrutiny. It's a glaring oversight that fuels endless what-ifs. The case for Kalachuk. There's no definitive proof tying Kalachuk to Lynne Harper's murder. No DNA, no eyewitnesses, no confession. But the circumstantial threads are tantalizing. The pattern of behavior. Kalachuk's modus operandi involved luring girls into his car with promises or deception. Lynn was last seen hitchhiking, making her a prime target for someone with his profile. Timing and location. He was in the region with documented instability and a history of predatory acts. On the day of the murder, he was already under watch for his behavior. Missed opportunities. The Ontario Provincial Police had him under surveillance for earlier incidents, yet failed to connect him to Lynn's disappearance. It's a frustrating lapse in investigation. These elements don't convict him. They paint a picture of a man who could have been the killer, a possibility the police never explored. It's hard not to wonder, did the real perpetrator slip away while attention was elsewhere? The case against Kalachuk. Here's the counterpoint. Suspicion isn't evidence. For all his troubling history, nothing concrete links Kalachuk to Lynn. No one saw him near her. No physical traces point his way. He died in 1975, long before his name surfaced as a suspect, leaving no chance to interrogate him or test theories. The trail was cold before it even warmed up. Meanwhile, the original case against Stephen Truscott had momentum. Eyewitnesses placed him with Lynn, and the prosecution built a narrative that, while flawed, convinced a jury. Kalachuk might simply be a convenient alternative, a way to explain a conviction that unraveled decades later. Without hard proof, he remains a shadow, not a certainty. Up next, the electrician with a rape conviction. The electrician with a rape conviction. Background and criminal history. The electrician was a local resident of the Clinton area during the time of Lynne Harper's murder on June 9, 1959. He had a prior conviction for rape, which marked him as an individual with a history of violent sexual behavior. Unfortunately, specific details such as his name, the circumstances of his conviction, or his exact whereabouts on the night of murder are not widely documented in available sources. Connection to the case. Due to his criminal record and proximity to the crime scene, the electrician was considered a plausible alternative suspect in Harper's murder, which involved sexual assault. However, he was never formally investigated by the police. The original investigation zeroed in on Stephen Truscott, who was the last person seen with Harper, and other leads, including this electrician, were not pursued with any depth. The lack of eyewitness accounts, physical evidence, or further documentation tying him to the crime means his involvement remains speculative. Why was he overlooked? The police exhibited tunnel vision, focusing almost exclusively on Truscott, based on circumstantial evidence like the estimated time of death and witness statements. The electrician's prior conviction alone wasn't enough to redirect an investigation, especially under the pressure to resolve the case quickly. As a result, his potential role in the murder was never thoroughly explored. The minister, accused of assault. Background and allegations. The minister was a clergyman in the Clinton community who had been accused of sexual assault around the time of Lynne Harper's murder. Like the electrician, specific details about his identity, the nature of the accusations, or the outcome of those claims are not well documented in public sources. His position as a community figure of authority adds a layer of complexity to his inclusion as a potential suspect. Connection to the case. The minister's history of alleged sexual misconduct made him another person of interest in the Harper case, given the sexual nature of the crime. However, similar to the electrician, he was not formally investigated by law enforcement. No direct evidence, such as witness testimony or physical links, has been established to connect him to Harper's death, leaving his potential involvement as a matter of conjecture. Cultural and social context. In the small, tight-knit community of Clinton in 1959, investigating a minister would have been a sensitive matter. Accusations against a respected figure might have been downplayed or avoided to prevent social disruption, which could explain why this lead wasn't pursued more aggressively. The lack of follow-through mirrors the broader investigative shortcomings of the case. Despite these electrifying threads, the case remains a vault of secrets, sealed tight by the hands of time. No charges have ever pinned down these spectral suspects, leaving the truth derived in the maddening limbo of what if. The controversy doesn't simmer, it rages, a tempest of clashing theories and pointed fingers, with no end in sight. Lynne Harper's murder transcends the label of a cold case. It's a gritty, emotional war zone where grief locks horns with justice, and doubt dances a wicked jig. For every accusation hurled at Truscott, another veers toward the unknown, leaving one haunting question to reverberate through the years. Who really killed Lynne Harper? I do have a few details I would like to point out. Why would Lynn be going out at 6 o'clock p.m. to get swim passes? Where was her ultimate destination, or did she plan to meet someone? What location would be open after 6 o'clock p.m. to pick up these passes? Tell me what you think, please. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting its final golden threads over RCAF Station Clinton, we stand once more at the edge of a mystery that refuses to rest. June 9, 1959, a night when the laughter of Lynne Harper, a cautious dreamer of just 12 years old, was stolen forever, in the shadowed depths of Lawson's bush. Stephen Truscott, a boy 14, paddled into a storm of suspicion that would strip away his youth and sear this small-town soul with doubt. A community once bound by trust unraveled, thread by fragile thread, as the question took root and grew. Who really killed Lynne Harper? We walked the paths of that fateful evening, through the evidence, the accusations, the decades of whispered theories, and still, the truth remains a phantom, slipping through our grasp. Was it the golden boy branded guilty by a nation in haste? Or did a darker figure, a salesman with chrome in his wake, an airman with secrets or a shadow never named, melt into the dusk, leaving Clinton to bear the weight of their silence? The past holds its secrets close. It's not done speaking. Maybe you hold the key, a thought, a memory, a spark that could pierce this endless night. If this story has stirred you, reach out. Visit us at substack.com at Ontario Cold Case to share your theories, your questions, or even a lead that's lingered too long in the dark. Join us on social media. Every voice could be the one that tips the scales toward justice. And don't let this tale fade here. Subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Available wherever you get your podcasts, from Apple Podcasts to Spotify and beyond. More mysteries await. More stories climb their way out of Canada's shadows, demanding to be heard. Until we meet again, keep your eyes on the twilight. The answers are out there, lurking where the light meets the dark. Keep listening, keep searching. Together, we might just unravel the truth. Because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Thank you. This has been Jay Nickel of Nickel Investigations, and you've been listening to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast.